Hello, beautiful souls. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. My name is Carol, and this channel is all about true crime, mystery, and anything abnormal. I highly recommend subscribing because this channel is definitely a vibe. Yes, I've been missing for a while, and I'm back. I missed you guys, and I hope you've missed me too. So I decided the first video coming back after my long hiatus, I would do the most requested case that I have ever got. If you're watching this video, you probably already know who Dennis Rader is. He is BTK, Bind, Torture, Kill, which he just loved to name himself, and that's exactly what he did. So let's get into it and discuss everything there is to know about BTK. Dennis Rader was born in Pittsburgh, Kansas on March 9th, 1945. His parents were Elvin and Dorothea, and after Dennis, they went on to have 3 more sons. Dennis's parents were part of the Lutheran Church, and that is going to play a big part later on in this story. Both of Dennis's parents worked full-time, and they were very busy at work. They didn't have a lot of time to spend with their 4 sons. And Dennis Rader would later go on to say that he felt neglected as a child. And I just have no sympathy for this man. He is such an awful person, and he does such horrible things. I don't care if you felt neglected in your childhood. You're psychotic. Normally, with specifically serial killers, they usually have quite traumatic childhoods. And I would say for Dennis Rader, for what we know, he had a pretty normal childhood. He grew up in Wichita, Kansas, and he really liked being outside. He would go fishing. He was part of the Cub Scouts, and he would read, and he liked comics. He kind of was like a bit of a loner. He did have friends, but he preferred to kind of be on his own. And just, I didn't say it at the beginning, just a caution warning for anyone watching. We're talking about everything today. I'm about to talk about things with animals, SA, like just all the most horrible things are going to be in this video. So we're going into the animal stuff. So Dennis Rader, later in life, after he was caught and everything, he did a lot of interviews, and he liked the, obviously he loved the attention that he got being BTK, but he also would go on and tell a lot about his life. And this is super creepy. When Dennis was a young child, we don't know exactly how old he was when this happened, but it's believed he was around 4 or 5. And he witnessed his grandmother killing a chicken. Now, his grandmother was not being like crazy psychotic or anything. She had chickens that she would kill, for their dinner. But Dennis said that this was one of the most important, significant memories from his childhood because he found it so exciting. Some of the kids that Dennis was friends with when he was a kid described that he loved killing turtles. And the way he would do it is he would tie basically a noose and hang the frogs until they would die. And Dennis really was quite excited very young about any type of injury to an animal, especially if he was inflicting it. This is where he somehow in his mind is becoming sexually aroused at the thought of harming animals. We're still in animals at this point, but it obviously is going to escalate. Another thing that he used to do, which is just so horrible, again, animal stuff, if you don't want to hear it, go forward a little bit. He would make a box and cut a little hole in it, and he would put either a dog or a cat in the box, and then he would again tie something around their necks and kill them that way. He liked strangling animals. I don't know how else to say it. And it wasn't just that he enjoyed inflicting pain, which is obviously creepy to begin with, but it was sexually arousing to him. Dennis also kind of became a bit of a peeping Tom, I believe they used to call them. I don't know. call them today, a psycho. But he loved to go around and peek in his neighbors' windows. And, you know, he was always trying to see if he could catch a woman or girl undressing or partially clothed. And back then, they used to have clotheslines, which I know people don't really have clotheslines anymore. But back then, you would, you know, wash your clothes in a washer and then hang your clothes outside just to air dry. So he would go to clotheslines and he would steal like women's bras or panties or I don't know, whatever he found appealing. He would just go off the clothesline, steal it, and take it home. Another moment that Dennis said was life-changing in his childhood was one time he was at home and his mother was vacuuming the living room. And, you know, you're vacuuming, you're leaning down, trying to get under the couch. And she ended up getting her ring stuck under the couch somehow. And she was trapped. Well, not seriously trapped, but she couldn't get out. Her hand was caught and her ring was caught. She couldn't get free. And she was kind of in pain. And Dennis was so turned on by this, which, I mean, you're turned on by your mom, like that's serial killer if I ever heard it. Yeah, so he realized from this point, which he's only, I think, about 10. So from seeing his mom in this position, he started to realize that he really liked seeing animals and now women in pain and bound in a way that they can't release themselves. So while Dennis is still in grade school, middle school, he is starting to fantasize about R-wording women. And part of the fantasy, obviously with BTK, is bind. So he wants to tie them up, torture them, and then I don't think he was on to fantasizing about murder yet. This was still middle school. I guess maybe he had moved on to murder. But he talked about in middle school, he would fantasize about R-wording women. And he would have specific women that he would fantasize about. And this would go on for his entire criminal career. Criminal career sounds so weird. But his entire span of all of the crimes that he committed. When Dennis was in 5th grade, he had a teacher who was known to be very strict, and she really was hard on the kids in her class. Now, one day Dennis was humiliated by her, and his response to that was to later follow her home from school and peek on her into her house, and he would watch through her bedroom window and see her undress or change. I don't know if he saw her naked, but he's peeping into her window, her bedroom window. And he started really enjoying going to spy on his teacher. And then he escalated things a bit in a very strange direction, but this is Dennis Rader, so we're always going to be headed in a strange direction. The next time he went to peep on the teacher, he brought a rope and tied it around his waist, and then pulled, as he's like looking through the window at this poor woman who doesn't even know he's there, peeping at her through the window, he takes the rope that's around his waist and he just pulls it as hard as he can. And he says that as soon as he like pulls, it's around his waist, just to be clear, it's not in like his genital area, it's around his waist, but he pulls it really tight and instantly he ejaculated. This is what he claimed. And when I was researching this, I listened to an interview that was done by Dr. Catherine Ramslin, and she's kind of been in the media a bit lately because going to testify at Brian Kohberger's trial, but she had been Brian Koberger's teacher. She extensively studied BTK. So what she was explaining was that in his childhood, ropes became sexualized to him. She said that Dennis, as a child, so at this point he's like 11 or 12, he's still a kid, he had fused ropes, voyeurism, and R-wording all into what was sexually exciting for him. Not little, normal little boy who would have a crush on a little girl. No, he wants to like tie people up and watch them in pain at like 11 or 12. And the thing with Dennis Rader is, from everything we know, he had a pretty normal childhood. Like usually, especially serial killers, when you talk about their childhoods, normally their childhoods, you're kind of like, I mean, it doesn't explain them becoming a serial killer, but they usually have quite traumatic childhood. And with Dennis, that doesn't seem to be the case. He seems to have had a pretty normal childhood. He said he was neglected. Honestly, I mean, obviously I care if a child is neglected. Do I care if Dennis Rader was? No. But yeah, so he had a pretty normal childhood, which is quite strange for a serial killer. And maybe there are things that happened that we don't know about or Dennis never wanted to share. But from everything he said and that we know, and the people who knew him as a childhood, his childhood was pretty normal other than him. Because, I mean, obviously, the things I've told you, he was pretty messed up from a very early age, hurting animals, just peeking on, it's just gross. Like, he's just gross. By the time Dennis was in the 9th grade, he said he started having dreams and fantasies that he knew he could not tell other people about. He knew that they weren't normal, and he says at this age, he knew what he was going to end up becoming. In 1963, Dennis graduated from Wichita Heights Valley Center High School. He then attended Kansas Wesleyan University, but he didn't do very well and he ended up dropping out after a year. Not much is known about his time at university. It was too much. He either wasn't trying hard, he couldn't make the grades to stay at school. We don't know anything if he was doing any weird sick shit, which I'm sure he was, but he's never talked about or told anyone, because a lot of this really sick, twisted stuff, I don't mean to laugh, it's bizarre. Most of it is from him, and I think he's proud of it. Like, that's probably the most disgusting thing, is how proud he is about all of these things. Then in 1966, he enlisted in the US Air Force to become a mechanic. Then in 1970, he left active duty and entered the reserves. Now, during this whole period, Dennis was ordering magazines of, women tied up or seeming like they were in pain. This is not something he wants to do consensually. To him, the big turn on is that it's not consensual. Another thing Dennis did was he loved drawing really messed up pictures. So he would draw pictures of women bound, tied up, just horrible situations. And he would go on drawing all of this throughout his life and would later draw some of his victims as well. In 1971, Dennis was working at IGA, a grocery store, when he met and married a woman named Paula. The couple would go on to have 2 children, Brian and Carrie. Carrie, his daughter, she actually wrote a book about her experience growing up with being the child of a serial killer. Now, obviously, she didn't know that until he was arrested. One thing that's often talked a lot about when it comes to Dennis Rader is that he lived this very normal life. He lived this very normal life with his family. He went to church every Sunday. He was hugely involved in the church. He was a Boy Scout leader, you know, like he had a lot that people thought he had this normal life. We do know from his daughter that she was essayed by Dennis as a child. Her memories of this are not clear. And when Dennis was finally caught, he kept meticulous notes, and he would refer to each woman that he hurt or killed as a project. And one of his projects was his daughter, Carrie. So we know he definitely was doing weird stuff to his daughter. We don't exactly know what, but I would imagine it was probably horrific. In 1973, he had gone back to college and earned an associate's degree in electronics. So all this time, Dennis has been a lot of the peeping Tom weird stuff, peeking into windows. He also at this point had started breaking into homes to steal women's bras and panties and I don't know, lingerie, anything kind of sexual to him, he would go in and steal. Dennis's urges just kept getting stronger and stronger, and they were getting more and more graphic. And the idea of just tying up a woman and assaulting her, that wasn't his fantasy anymore. He wanted to tie her up, torture her, and kill her. So he decides that's the choice he's gonna make. Dennis had had fantasy victims through starting, I believe his first fantasy victim was his 5th grade teacher, the one who he said humiliated him. He went home and peeked on her and pulled the, anyways. But all through his sick, twisted stuff going on in his head, he had specific women who were considered his fantasy victims. So he would fantasize about that particular victim and all the messed up shit that he wanted to do to them. One day, Dennis saw a woman named Julie Otero. She was walking down the street with her children with her, and she became one of Dennis's fantasy victims. But he was no longer interested in this being a fantasy. He had made the decision that he was going to do this, and Julie was going to be his first victim. So Dennis, being the creep that he is, he kind of was watching the house for a couple of weeks before he went and did what he did. And that was part of his routine. He, you know, he would find someone he thought would make a good victim. Then he would stalk them and watch their house. In the Otero family, there were 4 family members. Julie was the mother, Joseph was the father, and the son was also named Joseph, and the daughter was named Josephine, which I think is so cute. Joseph and Josephine. And obviously the father was Joseph, the mother was Julie. January 15th, 1974, Dennis had a plan. His plan was that he was going to break into the Otero household, and he was going to attack Julie. Now, when he went, he had been stalking the house and watching the routines. So when he went there, he was expecting Julie and the 2 children to be home. He was not expecting Joseph, the husband, to be home. When he broke into the house and realized that Joseph the father was in the home, which would obviously kind of be his biggest physical threat, he strangled the father, Joseph. He then strangled Julie, the mother. He then strangled the 2 children. Then at one point, Dennis realizes that Josephine, who was the daughter, was still alive. So he takes the daughter down into the basement to do God knows what with her. He ended up hanging her, and he said that he had done sexual things, but he would not go into detail of what those sexual things were. In his entire killing career, it sounds weird when I say career, I don't know what to call it, is life of murdering, he never raped anyone. The sexual gratification or the thing that turned him on, or what he was there for, was in the binding, the torture, the kill. That's why he's BTK. Actual sexual acts are not really that significant to him, because he doesn't do very many sexual things with the victims. It's more they die and that makes him ejaculate, basically. This is the first known murder that Dennis ever committed, and he's killed 4 people. And unfortunately, there were also 3 older children in the family, and they had been at school. And it was unfortunately those 3 children who came home and discovered their mother, their father, and their 2 young siblings murdered. And it's not even that, you know, they had to live the rest of their lives knowing their whole family was murdered. They actually were the ones who discovered the body and saw the actual horror of what Dennis had done. His next known victim, he watched for weeks. The reason I'm saying the next known victim is he was convicted of killing 10 people, but it's suspected that he killed more people. But he also at one point confessed to a murder that he hadn't committed. So who knows? We know for sure he killed 10 people, and police are pretty convinced that there are other victims. But after he had murdered the 4 people, he was very unsatisfied. As sick as that is to say, he didn't get what he wanted. When he had gone into that home, he wanted to have time with Julie, the mother, so that he could tie her up and torture her before he killed her. But because he went in and was not expecting Joseph, the husband, to be home, and as far as we know, this was the first time killing someone, he just killed everyone very quickly, and he was let down. Like, it sounds so gross saying that. His next victim is Catherine Bright. She was only 21 years old. Dennis had been stalking her for a couple of weeks, and she lived alone. So he felt like this was going to be the right opportunity for him to be able to actually go through and do all of the disgusting things that he wanted to do. So while Catherine was not home, on April 4th, 1974, Dennis Rader broke into Catherine's home, and he hid and was just kind of laying in wait to attack when she got home. What he was not expecting was for Catherine's brother to be with her, and he was staying there. Catherine's brother's name was Kevin, and he was either 18 or 19 years old. Some sources say he was 18, some say he was 19. But Dennis had a gun with him. So he had like a little kit. And, well, it wasn't so little, but he had a kit with a gun, ropes, weird BDSM shit that he wanted to do. Just all of these things that he wanted to use to restrain and hurt people. So Dennis had the brother Kevin tie up Catherine, and then Dennis tied up Kevin. And he had them in separate rooms. So he went into the room where Catherine was, because that's the reason he is there. Dennis can hear Kevin in the other room while he is in the room assaulting Catherine. So he goes into the other room and ends up in a physical altercation with Kevin, and he shoots Kevin, and he believes Kevin to be dead, which is something that happens a lot in his murders. Is he thinks he killed someone and then they're not dead. I don't know. Anyways, he shoots Kevin. He thinks Kevin's dead, so he goes back to do his disgusting whatever he's going to do to Catherine. But very quickly, he can hear Kevin, and Kevin did not die. He was shot, but he was able to get up and escape and run out of the house. So after he hears Kevin get out of the house, he realizes there's not much time. Police are going to be here soon. So he ends up stabbing Catherine and killing her. But this was not his plan. This was not what he wanted to do. And when he would talk about this, he would say how he was let down. it's just, ugh. And unfortunately, Catherine passed away. But Kevin, he was, he survived. And he was able to do a sketch with the police. But I don't know if the sketch artist didn't know what they were doing, or if maybe Kevin didn't get a good look. I don't know. But the sketch looked nothing like Dennis Rader. To be honest, like, it didn't look anything like him at all. Now, this murder was not linked to the Otero murders. This is one thing that I think is how BTK kept being able to kill, because it took a long time for them to link his murders together. So at this point, police are looking at these two situations as completely separate, not thinking that they were committed by the same person. So there was a completely separate man who was in trouble with the police. He's at the police station, and he confesses that him and a couple of his friends were the ones who had killed Catherine. Now, they weren't the people who killed Catherine, obviously, but it came out in the media that they had caught the man who had killed Catherine. Now, this really pissed off Dennis Rader. You'd think as a serial killer, if you kill someone and someone else is being blamed for it, you'd be happy you're getting away with it. But no, he needs the attention. He needs them to know, even though he doesn't want them to know exactly who he is, he wants credit for what he did. So good job, Dennis. So Dennis decides he's going to write a little letter and taunt the police, which becomes kind of, how he gets caught, but he needs to brag. To him, he really needs the attention. He really wants to brag about these things. As soon as police read this letter, they know 100% the person who wrote this letter is a person who committed the murders, because he had everything down to the injuries that everyone had sustained, the positions their bodies were in. Like, there was zero doubt by police that the person who wrote this letter was the person responsible. Also in the letter, he had told the police that from now on he would be using code words with them. And his code words were bind, torture, kill. So this is where he named himself BTK. This is where the name comes from. After that, BTK went silent. So a few years passed. Dennis had not physically hurt anyone that we know of. His fantasies, he would take like Barbie dolls and like tie them up and just do weird things with dolls. And he would draw pictures of these situations. And he also started taking pictures of himself. I will try to put some of the pictures in the video, but I don't know how they're gonna go over with YouTube because they're weird. So in these pictures, he would tie himself up. He would have on like women's lingerie. At this point, I think it was lingerie he had stolen from maybe the two victims he already had, but he was stealing lingerie and panties and bras for like a long time. So I don't know, maybe he had a whole collection. I don't know. But he would dress up in the, bra and panties, and he would wear this like weird face mask thing, and then he would tie himself up. And like at one point, he tied himself up by his feet. So his feet are like tied to a tree, and he's hanging upside down and taking pictures. So, I don't know, like, all of this had kind of kept him satisfied, as he would say, for a few years. And there was now a new police chief, and BTK was not on anybody's mind. Nobody was thinking about him. Police weren't looking for him. He was pretty much, it was unsolved murders, but there was no real interest in him or trying to find him. Most people believed that BTK had either been caught for committing a crime and he was in prison, or he was dead, or he had moved somewhere else and was committing crimes. They did not believe that he was still in Wichita. Like, they thought, the police didn't think he was, the public, nobody thought he was still in Wichita, but he was, and he was going to make a reappearance. So during this period, Dennis and his wife, Paula, had their son, Kevin, and Dennis got a job working for ADT, the security system. So the person who would come to your home and install a security system to keep you safe was a serial killer. Like, come on. I'm sure Dennis went after this job specifically because the access it gave him to people's homes. Dennis's next project. Now, project is what he would refer to as, you know, the people that he killed. On March 17th, 1977, Dennis forced his way into the home of Sherrilyn Dale. She was home with her 3 young children. When Dennis broke into the house, he told her, "I have a sexual problem and I need to tie you up." Like, what? Like, really? Like, I don't know. He would literally go in and tell, I can't imagine if somebody broke into your house and they told you that. So there's 3 children, young children at home. So he puts the 3 children in the bathroom so that he can do what he wants to do to Shirley. Shirley was kind of cooperative at the beginning because she had 3 young children in the house. And I think she genuinely believed he was going to come in, he was going to R-word her and leave. But no, he had much darker plans than that. He tied her up and did horrible things to her. He then put a plastic bag over her head to suffocate her. And Dennis said that the minute that he would suffocate and kill a woman, he would automatically ejaculate. But he never R-worded any women. Dennis claimed that rape was going too far. Like, what? That's too far? You're gonna kill someone. But that is like, I got a moral high ground. Like, give me a break. The reason I don't believe that he ever did that is because it wasn't what turned him on. I don't know. Maybe or maybe he was just turned on. Like, he would ejaculate from killing someone. Like, that's what made him excited. Sex was not what made him excited. And this murder of Shirley would not be linked to the other murders that he had committed. And that's one thing that happens throughout this whole case, is it takes a really long time for the police to put together that these are happening by the same person. They don't find out. Dennis tells them. The police are not putting anything together. Everything they put together is because Dennis told them. Dennis then took a 9-month break before he picked a new project. One day he saw 25-year-old Nancy Fox walking down the street, and Dennis was intrigued immediately by her and decided she was going to be his new project. Like, it's so weird they calls them projects, but whatever. He's weird, so young. So he was stalking her for quite a while, and he figured out that she lived alone, and he also found out where she worked. And he would go into her job and interact with her as a customer when he's going to be the one that's going to kill you and you don't even know it. Like, it's so creepy that this guy. And on December 8th, 1977, Dennis broke into Nancy's home. He had cut the phone line before he had gone in, and he broke in and he was laying in wait for her to come home. When Nancy walked in the house, she was now face to face with Dennis and a gun to her face. And Dennis told her, just like he told the last victim, that he had a sexual problem and he needed to tie her up. He told Nancy that if she let him do what he wanted to do to her, he would let her live. But we all know that's not going to happen. So he tied her up and tortured her for quite a while before he ended up strangling her. And again, when he strangled her, it caused him to immediately ejaculate. Now, this man was leaving his crumbs all over the place because nobody was worried about DNA back then. I don't even think they knew what DNA was. So while he was very careful to never leave fingerprints, he was spraying all over these women. So there was DNA everywhere, covering all of like whatever they were wearing when he was killing them. On this occasion, when he got home, Paula, his wife, let's not forget he's got a wife and 2 kids at home, but she asked him, like, where have you been? And he just said he had car problems and that's why he had been taking so long to come home. His wife on 2 occasions did catch him doing his sexual stuff. I don't know what to call it. So he would put on this weird mask, women's lingerie, tie himself up, and he was really into auto asphyxiation, which is so dangerous. Never do it. Don't try it. But he was very turned on by doing this to himself. So his wife had caught him twice doing this, so he was very careful to stop doing it in a time or place where his wife could catch him. But other than that, his wife really did not have suspicions about Dennis right up until he's arrested. The next day, Dennis was so excited because finally he had been able to do to the victim exactly what he had fantasized about doing for so long. So he went for a little drive, drove past her house, and he could tell like nobody has discovered the body yet. And he was just so excited for the police to find the body. He goes to a payphone and calls the police to tell them that they can find her at home and she is deceased. And Dennis just loved the attention. Even though it wasn't, nobody knew who he was, he loved hearing when the police would talk about his murders, when it was on the news, anything like that. He loved the attention, and he loved to kind of play this cat and mouse game with the police because he regularly would write letters to the police, taunting them, saying that they would never be able to catch him. Sometimes he would send actual photographs he had taken of the victims dead. Sometimes he would send in other trophies, I guess, that he would take from the victims. But he would basically just taunt the police, saying, like, you can't catch me. On February 10th, 1978, the police go on the news to tell the people living in Wichita, Kansas, that there is a serial killer out there. Now, these letters that Dennis sent to the police, he would type out a letter and print it, and then he would photocopy it multiple times, and he believed by doing this they could never trace it to the computer that it was or the printer it was printed on, or the computer it came from. I don't know, he thought he was being sneaky, but all he was doing was linking himself to photocopiers. So police were able to figure out where these letters were photocopied. One was at the public library, which was also where he had left a letter I mentioned earlier in a mechanical book. That I believe that was the first letter he wrote police, but he had left one there. So they knew that the letter had been photocopied at the public library. The other place they found out that it had been photocopied was in the basement of Wichita State University, which Dennis was attending part-time. So the police obviously tell the public that these letters were sent in and photocopied at this university and at the library. And Dennis, I think, kind of scared him a bit because he realized, I attend their university there part-time, and things could be getting maybe a little too close for comfort. Then on April 28th, 1979, he had broke into the home of a woman by the name of Anna Williams. She was 63 years old. He had cut the phone line, he broke in, and he was hiding, waiting for her or her daughter to come home. But I guess he was waiting a really long time, and I guess it was taking too long. I don't know. So he stole some things from her, which, you know, it was the typical things that he would steal, you know, usually panties and bras and maybe lingerie, those types of things he would steal. So he took some trophies and he left without hurting anybody. But Dennis needed the attention so badly that he ended up mailing Anna some of the things he had stolen from her home. Basically was telling her that she escaped death. So police very quickly determined that this was BTK. Now, Dennis had called 911 years ago to report a murder, and police started thinking, okay, let's play the 911 call to the public and let's see if anyone recognizes his voice. So they release the audio of Dennis when he had made the 911 call reporting a previous murder, and they got over 100 tips, but nothing useful came of it. So Dennis is still doing arts and crafts, you know, tying up Barbie dolls, drawing really creepy pictures, really just weird shit. And then he would just jerk off fantasizing about all of this. In 1979, Dennis graduated from Wichita State University, and he graduated with an administration of justice. Not good for a serial killer. Dennis then applied to become a police officer a bunch of different places, but he was turned down on all of the jobs. But he had learned a lot that he was going to use to hopefully evade the police. But Dennis's need for attention would eventually be his downfall, thankfully. Dennis was also a Boy Scout leader. I'm not sure if they're called leaders, like the adult that goes with the Boy Scouts. So as a kid, he did Boy Scouts, and then he became one of the like Rangers. I don't know what they're called. He was involved with the Boy Scouts. So that's going to become very significant later. But just to let you know, he's hanging out in the woods with little boys. He doesn't hurt little boys as far as we know though. So that's good. And Dennis continued to work at ADT, and he had a 7-year cooling off period. Now, normally cooling off periods don't last that long with serial killers. Some serial killers, it does, but 7 years seemed to be a long time. But after 7 years, he decided, I gotta do it again. His next victim was actually a neighbor of his, 53-year-old Maureen Hedge. Now, all of the people Dennis had killed lived very close to him. This was the closest that someone lived to him. On April 27th, 1985, after he had been stalking her, he decided that was going to be his day. So let me tell you what this sneaky little fucker does, okay? So remember I said the Boy Scouts, he's like a leader or whatever. So he goes on a Boy Scouts and they're, you know, fishing, camping, I don't know, whatever Boy Scouts do, tie knots, yeah. So him learning all those knots as a kid from the Boy Scouts, he didn't use that for any good. But so anyways, this night he is out at a camp out with the Boy Scouts. So he's all busy with the boys. Finally, all the boys are like in their tents going to sleep. And there's Dennis and there's a couple other adults who are there. So he says to one of the adults, I have to go do something, but I'll be right back. I won't be long. So yeah, sure, we'll cover for you. Go ahead. So then he drove to a bowling alley. He goes into the bowling alley and he orders a beer. And he doesn't drink the whole beer, but he just drinks enough so he has the smell of alcohol on his breath. He then calls a cab. When the cab comes, Dennis acts like he's really, really drunk. And so he has the cab drive him to his neighborhood. And the cab just thinks, oh, he's just some drunk man, whatever. But he wasn't drunk at all. He'd only had a sip. He just wanted the smell of alcohol in his breath. Like, he went into so much detail on things that were just, I don't know why they even mattered, but. So then, he walks from where the cab lets him off to Maureen's house. He cuts the phone line. After he cut the phone line, he broke into the house and was laying in wait for Maureen to come home. Dennis is, sitting there being a friggin' creep in this woman's house. Finally, Maureen, she comes home with her boyfriend. Now, her boyfriend doesn't live with her, But the two of them come home and they are hanging out for about an hour and a half before the boyfriend decides he's going to leave and go home to his house. So that whole hour and a half where they're sitting around talking, who knows what, Dennis is in the house. Like, it's so creepy how creepy this creep is. So after Maureen, her boyfriend, leaves, she gets ready for bed and she gets into bed to go to sleep. And once she was asleep, Dennis comes out. And as soon as Maureen sees him, she recognizes him because they're very close neighbors. And he uses his bare hands and he strangles her to death. But Dennis, he decided he wasn't done yet. He wanted to do some more things. So Maureen is deceased at this point. He wraps her body in a blanket, puts her in the trunk of her car, and he drives her to the Lutheran church that he is a member of. He takes her down into the basement at the church and he starts posing her in, tying her up and posing her weirdly and just being a friggin' weirdo. But once he decided that he had fulfilled all of his sick fantasies and everything he wanted to do with this poor woman's body, he then wraps her up again in a blanket, takes her out of the church basement, puts her back into her car. He goes and then he dumps her body. Then he drives her car to the bowling alley where his car is, because that's where he got the cab. I don't know if I said it was a bowling alley or a bar. The place he went in to get a drink, there was a bar in the bowling alley. So he gets a drink, then he goes, pretends he's drunk with the cab, right? So he's got her car. He leaves her car at the bowling alley. He gets back in his car and he drives back to the Boy Scout camp out. Like nothing ever happened. Maureen, she was reported missing, I believe it was the next day, very soon, because she didn't show up for work and she was normally a very responsible person. No one could get a hold of her. Initially, first they found her car and then eventually they found her body. Now, this was not linked to BTK. Like, how many murders are happening in Wichita that they can't link these? I don't know. Her murder is not linked to BTK. And Dennis just sat back for a year and was just so excited by the thought that he had committed this murder, gotten away with it. They couldn't link it to BTK. He just, was so excited. So Dennis, after about a year, decides he wants a new project. So he'd been stalking 28-year-old Vicky Wirgo, and he'd been stalking her for quite a while. And then on September 16th, 1986, he did something a little bit different. Normally he would break in and hide. This time he just walked up to her door and claimed to be a phone repair man. And she let him in, assuming that that's what he really was. And it's crazy to think about. There was a time when someone could just come to your door and say, I'm here to fix the phone, and people would let them in. Like, you imagine if a stranger came to your door and said, I'm here to do something, and you just let them in. Wild times back then. So he had come in and Vicky was taking care of her baby when Dennis decided he was ready to strike. He did the same thing he had done to other victims. He strangled her and then posed her in weird positions and took pictures of her. And then he left the house and he ended up stealing her car. So Bill, who was Vicky's honey. What you doing, Bubba's? Bill, who was Vicky's husband, was the one to find her body. And by the point that Vicky's body was discovered, Dennis had already driven Vicky's car to where he had left his own car. He was back in his own car and back to work before her body was even found. And the thing about this murder that's so sad is that her husband, Bill, was the suspect in her murder for a really long time. He was never charged, but it was just always kind of suspected that he was the one who had killed his wife. And I just can't imagine your partner is murdered and like she was murdered with the baby at home. Like, I can't imagine. And Bill later said that these years where, you know, he wasn't charged with the murder, but everyone thought he did it. He said they were just horrible years for him and his son. And he was trying to grieve his wife while he's going through all of that, which is just so terrible. In 1988, Dennis lost his job at ADT and he got another job doing census, and this job would involve him traveling. And this is when he started having what he called hotel parties. After Diddy and Dennis Rader, I don't know if I ever want to go in a hotel again, to be honest. So what he would do at these hotel parties, it was just him. But he could be as sick and weird and disgusting as he wanted to be, and there was no one who would catch him. So he would, you know, dress up in victims' bras and underwear or whatever the hell weird shit, I don't know. You know, he'd have face mask and he would like choke himself out and tie himself up, and yeah, like he would call these hotel parties where he just went and like was a sick pervert by himself. And the hotel parties were always, he would strangle himself until he climaxed. Dennis claimed these hotel parties that he would have, they kept him from killing, in his words, for the next 4 years. He was able to satisfy himself enough with these hotel parties. In 1991, Dennis became a compliance officer. So basically, a compliance officer goes around and tells people that their grass is too long. I don't mean to laugh. There's nothing funny about this. It's just what he would also, if people were parked where they shouldn't be, he would, I don't know, give them a ticket. And he also would catch dogs. So he's kind of known in the neighborhood as like the dog catcher. But what this job did do is give him an opportunity to very easily stalk his victims, which was his favorite pastime when he wasn't murdering or torturing or binding. So his last known victim was Dolores Davis. And on January 19th, 1991, Dennis was on one of his Boy Scout campouts. So he did the same thing he had done previously. He waits until the boys are in bed, and then he tells the other adults that are there, oh, I gotta go do something and I'll be back. And they're like, okay, go, yeah, have a good time. So I guess this is his alibi to kind of explain where he is for so long in the middle of the night. So we know Dolores was in bed and asleep by about 10 o'clock. Dennis Rader arrived just after midnight, it's believed. And this time he didn't cut the phone line. He wasn't breaking in, trying to hide. He just barged in the house. He just smashed through a glass window. Like, he just went up to the house. I don't know. He always had a gun with him. So maybe the gun broke the glass. He used something to break the glass and it just shattered. And he just like went in the house. Like, zero fucks were given. Not that he ever did, but this was much different than the crimes he had committed previously. So he did the same thing again. He strangled her, and when he strangled her, he ejaculated. Then he decided to roll her up in a blanket, put her in the trunk of her car because he was going to go and take pictures with her body. So Dennis gets her out of the car, and he then realizes that he left his gun at Dolores's house. He needs to go back and get the gun because it's like a registered gun to him. So he puts Dolores's body under a bridge. He goes back to her house and gets the gun that he had left there, and then he goes back to the Boy Scout sleepover. So the next day, he's now going to go back to Dolores's body because he still wants to pose her and take weird pictures and do, I don't know, weird shit. So he goes back to where she is. So he has her tied up, put in, you know, the positions he wants, and he gets his pictures taken, and then he leaves her body. So after he leaves her body, he stops at a rest stop to clean himself up because I guess he's kind of a mess after this. And a police officer approaches him. And at this time, if the police would have looked in his back seat, he had a kill kit in his back seat. But he just, when the cop was asking him what he was doing, he just kind of told him, you know, I was just out for a drive to get some, you know, blah, blah, blah. Made up, I don't even know what the excuse was, but the cop was like, okay, yeah, see you later. And not that I think there was any reason why the cop would have had to check his car. I don't know. On February 1st, 1991, Dolores's body was finally discovered. Between 1974 and 1991, Dennis Rader, BTK, had murdered 10 people. So in Dennis's mind, he felt like he had left a great legacy for himself. Then in 2001, Gary Ridgway was caught. Now, Gary Ridgway was caught using DNA. This got Dennis's attention real quick because he knew that his DNA was all over the murder victims, because when he would strangle the woman, he would ejaculate all over her and just leave it there because they didn't know about DNA. So he started getting really concerned, like, they're gonna find my DNA because they're gonna find your DNA. And police at this time, they were hoping that DNA would help them finally solve the BTK murders. And then in 2003, Dennis walked his daughter down the aisle. In 2004, he had his last hotel party because Dennis was getting nervous. With this Gary Ridgway getting caught through DNA, he felt like his days were numbered. He felt like at some point he was about to be caught. And he was right. So what he started doing is he started burning some of the trophies and things that he had taken from victims. And also, like, through his whole life, he was breaking into women's houses, stealing bras and underwear, stealing them off clotheslines. So I don't even know how much, like, lingerie and bras and underwear he had. But what he started doing was he started burning some of the evidence, but he would take photos of everything because he couldn't actually, like, let go of any of this stuff. January 17th, 2004 was the 30th anniversary of the Otero murders, where that was the first murder that we know that he committed, where he committed 4 murders, the mother, father, and the 2 children. So it was a 30-year anniversary. So, you know, in Wichita, in the newspaper, they were printing an article about the story. And in it, basically the police were saying, we believe BTK is either dead or in prison. Now, for Dennis, that was not acceptable. He did not like that they thought he was dead or in prison. He wanted them to know he was still loose. So March 19th, 2004, he wrote a letter to Wichita Eagle newspaper. And the letter said it was from Bill Thomas Kilman. And if you do the initials, it's BTK. In the letters that he'd written to police, he had always used different names. It wasn't like he stuck to one particular name. But with this letter was Vicky's driver's license. Now, that was not a murder they had considered to be a murder committed by BTK. But now that he's sending them her driver's license and able to describe how her body was discovered, they knew that he had to have been the one who committed it, because the police she was still alive when they arrived. So they had rushed her to the hospital. So there was no initial photos taken of her in the position she was found in, because they're in a rush to save her life. They don't, they're trying to save her life. They're not worried about taking pictures. So Dennis was able to describe the position her body was in, and I'm assuming it was probably a distinct position, because as soon as he described the position, they were like, he killed this woman. Like, this is the murder. This is BTK. Then he had left a brown package. I believe it was under a bench. It was somewhere outside. I'm not 100% on the bench part, but he had left this brown package, and in it had a word search that he had made, which it was just stupid. Like, the words in the word search were like fantasy, rape, like just sick stuff, right? I don't know. But he also had details of the Otero murders, which police were very interested in, because then they knew for sure that this was the man who had committed these murders. He also in that included a drawing, because he drew all these weird pictures, and with that package he had included a picture of a woman hanging upside down. Then on July 17th, 2004, there was a letter found, and this was found in the library drop box in a mechanic's book. And in this letter, Dennis had confessed to killing a young man, and the young man had taken his own life. And it wasn't suspicious at all. And police knew that Dennis had not committed this. So now he's confessing to things that he didn't do. And he had left another letter for the police at a UPS drop-off. And in the letter, he was confessing to the murders he had committed, but he was also confessing to crimes he didn't commit, just in an attempt to confuse the police. He left another package. So he started leaving cereal boxes because he's a serial killer, which is like the lamest thing I've ever heard in my life. But he started leaving the packages in cereal box, confessing to the murders, putting in trophies that he had taken from victims and his own sick artwork. But in this package, there was also Barbie dolls that he had like bound, tied up real strange. But there was another thing that was very significant about this package, because this is when Dennis Rader asked the police, if I send you a floppy disk, can you trace it? This is obviously how he ends up getting caught. Police are supposed to leave like messages in the newspaper, and basically in the newspaper they say, oh yeah, send us a floppy disk, we can't trace ya. And he believes them. February 26, 2005 is when they receive the floppy disk. When they receive it, they find out that the last place that anything had been saved on this disk was at the Lutheran church. And Dennis was actually the president of something at the church. But the last, like it showed that it had been last saved at this Lutheran church by someone named Dennis. So when they find out that there's a Dennis Rader who's the president, they're like, I think that's maybe Dennis Rader, I think we got him. They want DNA to, lock this thing down. And the way they get the DNA is a bit strange. I mean, it's good they caught him, but so they suspect Dennis Rader, and they find out that her daughter, while she was attending university, she would have gone to this particular medical center. And while she was at university, she had a pap test done. So they would have her DNA. So they gave the police the pap test, like the DNA from it, and the police run it. And obviously it comes back as this is the child of the murderer. So they know, yeah, it is Dennis Rader. So on March 1st, 2005, Dennis was charged with 10 counts of first-degree murder. It looked like Dennis was going to go to trial, but then on May 3rd, 2 months after he had been arrested, Dennis decided to plead guilty. On August 18th, 2005, he was sentenced to 10 consecutive life sentences. So he is in prison and he will die there. And over the years, there have been other people that they believe were victims of Dennis Rader, but as of right now, it's only the 10 people. Saying only 10, like that's a lot of people to kill, but he's only confirmed to have killed 10 people. So this has been one of the most requested cases that I have got since I started my channel. And since I've been on a long hiatus, if you haven't seen me, I'm back. Yeah, we moved to the other side of the country, so we've been very busy. Now, I'd love to know, through this video, I know like I have the sun coming in here. I don't quite have a great setup for the way to do the lighting. So I don't quite have my setup exactly what I'm going to do because the light has changed throughout the video. So if you notice, like, part of it's because the sun is going down while I'm doing the video. So in my next video, I'll have everything set up properly with proper lighting, so I don't know if this is gonna look bad, but I hope you guys have been doing good. Yeah, I was having some medical issues. I have really bad rheumatoid arthritis, and I've been dealing with a lot of pain. And it's kind of getting under control now. And me and Jerome then moved from all the way from the East Coast to the very west coast of Canada, and we absolutely love it here. But obviously all of that has been super busy, so I haven't been able to do anything for the channel, but I'm back now for real. So there'll be another video in a week, and the next video is one of my most requested videos as well. So I thought coming back, the first couple of videos I would do would be the videos that have been requested the most since I started my channel, and then I'll go back to more kind of unknown. But if there's any stories you want me to talk about, put it in the comment section. I need suggestions if you have any, because yeah, I need good stories. So yeah, please leave me a suggestion. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. Give the little like, bloop, thumbs up. It takes you 2 seconds and it really helps me out. So I'm super happy to be back, and hopefully you're super happy that I'm back. Do something today that makes your soul happy, and I will see you in the next one.